have to gather and to make decisions as representatives of people of this community. And I just ask that tonight, as we have discussion and as we vote on these important issues, that you would give us wisdom and direction. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
Thank you. Everyone seat. Madam Clerk, can you do a roll call, please?
Commissioner Webster? Here. Commissioner Holzhausen?
Here.
Commissioner Johnson?
Here.
Commissioner Garber?
Here.
Commissioner Howard?
Here.
Commissioner Emery? Here. And Chairman Broder.
Here. All right. I would at this time entertain a motion to approve today's agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Support. I have motion support. Any conversation on the agenda changes? All in favor of approving tonight's agenda, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the agenda is approved. I would now need a motion to approve the minutes of April 20, 2023 Board of Commissioners meeting.
So moved.
Support.
Motion with support, discussion on the minutes. All in favor of approving those minutes, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. I'll move on to approval of the bills. Commissioner Garber.
Thank you. I move to approve the invoice edit reports dated 4/14, 4/21, 4/24, 4/25, 4/28, 5/4, and 5/12 in the amount of $8,318,119 and authorize Treasury to draw warrants for the same.
Support?
I have a motion of support. Any further discussion on the bills? Call for roll call, please.
Commissioner Holzhausen?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Garber?
Yes.
Commissioner Howard?
Yes.
Commissioner Emery?
Yes.
Commissioner Webster?
Yes.
Chairman Broder.
Yes, bills are approved. At this time, we have a presentation by our County Attorney, Eric Morris, regarding the possibility of setting up some kind of a housing authority. So, Eric, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks. And so the purpose of this presentation is to start the discussion about what a housing authority might offer for Shiawassee County. I'll give you just a very basic overview of what it would take to set it up and what some of the pluses and minuses are. We've looked, a lot of this has come as the board and its members have been working on community corrections, which has raised a lot of issues about homelessness, access to housing for people who are in pretrial services, and the other things that we've been working on that has come up quite frequently are veterans, and how to, especially for homeless veterans and veterans who need a combination of mental health services and social services, what can we do for those folks? One of the things that has come up was what can we do as far as housing? Common denominator amongst all of our vulnerable populations in the county appears to be lack of housing, whether it be temporary, transitional, or permanent. This piece, a housing authority, would generally fit the temporary or transitional category, where developing more permanent solutions might take a different approach or have different solutions. So what Greg has done under his leadership, he visited or spoke with a county that has kind of taken a leadership position on the issue of housing and veterans, and that's St. Joseph County. And what they have done is they set up a housing authority, and they use the housing authority to purchase and operate some temporary housing units specifically designed for homeless veterans. And my understanding is that they're cash flow positive because they get grants, subsidies, and in certain cases even subsidized rent payments from various state, federal, county government agencies. So in that vein, I was asked to kind of look at what the structure of what it would be, give some very basic overview. What you would be setting up is technically called a building authority. It's more commonly referred to as either a housing commission or a housing authority. Purpose of a building authority is to purchase, operate, improve, maintain really any structure that has a lawful government purpose attached to it. A building authority can also issue bonds. Of course, those bonds will be essentially under the credit umbrella of the county, so the county will be having to approve any bonds that are issued, indebtedness that's issued under the name of this authority. The other thing the authority can do is it can, purchase and maintain property, it can enter into contracts. The analogy that I like to use is with the land bank. That's another organization that is separate from the county that was established just recently by the county when we when we identified a specialized need, right? So the specialized need for the land bank was housing generally and economic development, those two things right there. And the land bank offered a lot of tools that are helpful in that fight. Similarly, a housing authority offers a lot of tools that are helpful in the fight against homelessness, I guess is what I'll call it, or underhoused individuals. The main tools are, you're going to get specialized oversight. So you're going to appoint a board of people. The Board of Commissioners is going to appoint a housing board, and that board of people will be dedicated to dealing with these issues, right? So when you have something that's big and has a lot of moving parts, these people on this board will deal with it, right? Instead of having to have the Board of Commissioners individually manage it, or instead of pushing it down on a county department, right? Every county department's pretty well at its limit right now. The other thing is, so as I mentioned before, Board of Commissioners can appoint the board. You can retain a lot of control over the strategic direction of a housing authority and some financial control too. And you're going to get access to funding as an authority that you can't get as a county. So we're talking whether it's VA or the big one in the housing world is HUD or MISHDA. There's MISHDA and HUD grants that we can't get unless we're a housing authority. And then of course there's Section 8 housing, which is basically just government subsidized housing for people with lower income. Right now, I'm not sure that there are any Section 8 programs at a county. Let me strike that. There is no countywide Section 8 program. There may be local programs that I'm not aware of. But just having this authority is one of the things that you need to even open the tap to get that money into the county. So having said all of that, it would be set up by much the same process as land bank. We do a resolution establishing the board would be appointed, they would is land bank. Specialized problem, specialized solution. That's all I've got. I want to keep it short.
So this is a follow-up to the
6 minutes.
presentation by Sam last month or slightly before by AKT Peerless. So we have drafted
Yeah, we have drafts of the resolution and the articles of incorporation, all that stuff. Actually setting it up is not the big part. It's deciding how do you want to use it and how do you want to fund it and what people do we need to get involved in this to make it succeed.
And part of that is we'll be passing those out to you at some point since we finished tinkering with them. But then we'd like some direction from this board about what way you would like to go with establishing or not a housing authority.
If I could make a couple of comments, because I kind of came back from St. Joe County and asked this to be looked into, and I see a lot of upsides. I found out when we were in St. Joe County that if we are going to do anything either with the veterans or with County Corrections Advisory Board, and we all know the veterans, we've got our new facility opening, they're looking to expand services. They've been wonderfully successful. We have to have a housing authority in order to basically collect rents. I don't think there's always, to me, some danger as a conservative person in establishing a new governmental unit, but the control will stay with this body, and this is a fairly conservative body financially because we appoint the board. We would have to approve if for some reason they wanted to bond. I can't imagine.
Yeah, and let me be very clear. I mentioned that. I don't see that on the horizon.
No.
And the purpose of this is not to build housing projects.
No.
We're not putting up apartments and shoving people into crappy apartments. That is not what's happening here.
But some of the ideas, the Community Corrections Advisory Board that Arlene has really been instrumental in leading the charter, some of their ideas are non-starters. Without this, we can't even consider them looking for grants because we have to have this kind of authority. I also wanted to mention one of the benefits for especially some of our cities. I know in Owasso, and I suspect Corunna and Durand and so on, we have a lot of rental housing, and this would allow the Section 8 housing. And the advantage of Section 8 housing is not only does it benefit the residents in that a lot of times they can get a subsidized rent, but I know from personal experience, landlords who've been involved in this, they are very picky about the quality of the house. You are not a slumlord and go to Section 8 housing. They have a lot of inspection requirements. They have a lot that requires that you have houses that are up to standard and very livable. And that's a very good thing for our cities. So I see a lot of upside on this personally.
And I would note that the staff time involved in starting this, at least at the beginning, is relatively little as far as expenditures. And this is similar to how we set up with the land bank. The land bank incurred a total of $17,000 worth of expenditures last year, which was mostly for the attorney. But now that he works for us, we won't have that.
That number's been reduced to 0.
Yeah, we haven't gotten any bills in the last 2 months, so it's been great. But that being said, the per diem for the individuals that attend the meeting, and then any allocation of staff time at some point. But that's really the only expenses that will be for the starting this up will be the per diems for the members of the board that you appoint, and then Eric's time, my time, and I'm sure that Justin Horvath and the SCDP will be part of this as they have been working with Julie and the land bank, because we're small enough that we can have synergy among all of these different groups.
Yeah, I think that was mentioned. The other thing is we have a brownfield redevelopment board that was dormant that's now come back to life because it works in conjunction with the land bank. And if we do get this set up, I'd like to see one of the issues, Greg, I can talk to you about later, is that you may not be able to be on the board, or the board of commissioners may not be able to be on the board. But in any event, you could set up a very similar board membership so that land bank, down to brownfield redevelopment and housing authority have a lot of commonality in membership so they can kind of understand all the issues.
Also, a little side note on that. I'm just in the talking phases of possibly organizing another trip out to St. Joe County. And if anybody would like to see their very impressive setup and what they've done there, the original idea was kind of that the veterans have a nice nest egg they're sitting on to help them spend some of their money helping veterans, and it turns out in St. Joe they're actually making money on it. So it doesn't work much for that, but imagine if we can set up some things for homeless vets and do a certain amount of rehabilitation and counseling, and it doesn't cost anything. That would be a wonderful thing.
Are we gonna buy some houses or rent houses or hotels or what?
That would be the first task of the board if it were set up, would be to try to figure out what.
Where are you gonna put all these people?
There's really only a relative handful in our county.
Yeah, I think for the
It would
program
have
to
to
be
be in our county. It's been talked
Correct.
about. That's what St. Joe does. It's just restricted to people who are residents of established residency. Here we have like I said, a relative handful. A couple of duplexes might do it, or maybe a small multi-unit thing, 5 or 6 units. It would depend on the Veterans Board and the Housing Authority what they wanted to do.
I thought maybe the people in the south border, we'd be getting busloads up here now. We're gonna have rooms.
Well, that's
No,
and
thankfully
been-
no.
That's actually
What's
been
gonna stop
discussed,
them if
Gary.
they find out?
I hope not. Well,
That
they're
is-
not gonna be eligible for this housing.
That's
It'll be
right. That is
veterans
something
only.
that's been
That's it.
discussed, is you do not want to
We're not gonna do
ever
that.
open things up to where you're attracting, you know.
Looks like it could be to me, but I'm too
You
concerned.
may not
I
be
guess.
eligible, but they're good at displacing veterans.
Yeah,
That's true,
Certain parts.
yeah.
I did have a question.
yeah, they're kicking them out to put them in, so
I did have a
they're gonna
question.
do the same thing here.
Council has
so,
raised the
I
issue,
don't-
and I think the chairman also kind of addressed it too. First of all, it appears from what you said that we have legal authority to establish this.
Yes.
But having established it, my question goes more to what oversight we would have. And you kind of alluded to that in that one thing was, we wouldn't have members of this commission on that.
So there is a provision in the statute that says that a member of the incorporating body cannot be a member of the board of the housing authority. I need to make sure that that is good law still and do a little bit more research, but that is certainly not the case in other authorities. This is a specific type. So yes, so number one, I think as far as oversight, it would be financial. meaning that any money that they have, at least in the first phases, is gonna be coming from us, so therefore we can put plenty of strings on it. And then, of course, the appointment power. Now, the statute is silent about removal of board members, so I'm gonna use some standard language that's been used with other boards, but appointment includes, in a lot of, the appointment power in a lot of cases includes the removal power. So to answer your question, it's financial oversight, programmatic oversight in the sense that I'm gonna be the lawyer, he's gonna be kind of the main administrator until we get Horvath or somebody from SEDP involved. So that's number 2, and then number 3 is the appointment and removal power. So there's your 3 oversight prongs, and I agree, when you set up a new government body, it tends to have a life of its own, but everyone here, and I think the people who are likely to be elected here in the near future are very responsible with money and oversight, so I don't see it as a huge problem.
And if I may, Commissioner, one of the things we did for the land bank, because the land bank doesn't have any staff, doesn't have any money, they get what they get from the general fund. We created an agreement that essentially the board entered into an agreement with the county where we provide the services. So we essentially became part of that organization. And so that allowed us to have direct control over the finances and the policy agenda. Now that one is different because Julie is the statutory chair of the land bank board.
Right.
And she is the county treasurer. But
I kind of like the idea that they become part of us, we don't become part of
Yeah,
them.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that it's gonna require consistent oversight from this board. Now, does that mean that it requires a lot of time? No, but I think that every 2, 3, 6 months, somebody from this board needs to be, so whether they can be an official member of the board is one thing, but ex officio or visiting member of the board, just to make sure, I mean, there's all sorts of things we can do to provide more oversight.
I assume, I'm sorry.
Given what you say, and you've got more to do for sure, the little I know about it, I am just concerned about that we don't create something that's gonna get beyond our control. The social merit as described by the chairman, I think, is very positive, very good. I'm just concerned about another governmental entity that we have to have
Yeah.
solid control.
I think it should be, and I think you're right too, and I think that chairman shares your concerns, and so do I.
Very much so. The system is set up, unfortunately, a certain way that in order to tap into certain funds and resources and do things we would like to do, we are required to jump through these legal hoops. And I assume that the authority to establish such a thing also gives us the authority to dissolve it. If we
I'm
don't-
gonna withhold my advice on that. at this moment.
Interesting.
Well, it's not, no, there's not, it's not, that's the thing, it's easy to say.
Probably can.
There'll be a way to do it, but it won't be as easy as you want it to be. It's easier to set something up than it is to kill it, especially if it's a government entity. I mean, like with the land bank has its own set of rules for that, it's not an automatic thing. I mean, each authority has different rules, but I'll go through that, I'm sure, when we present the documents.
All right.
But just to clarify, this could be as big or as small as we want it to be.
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, if we did one house with 6 veterans in it,
That
and
could be,
that's all the housing
that could be
authority did,
everything that you
that's
ever
it.
do.
Yeah,
Yes.
and we get to decide how big that is.
Correct.
We don't have to approve a housing project or a
No,
subdivision or whatever.
no, ma'am.
I think I'd like to understand the why, what the need is out there in the county right now before we go through the how we implement it. I think we need to know the why, how many veterans are out there, what facilities are out there now that we could partner with, what nonprofits are there out there now that are potentially available to house homeless individuals of whatever race, creed, etc. I think that's data the board should look at before we go into, okay, how do we do it? We know we can do it, other counties have done it, it's obviously possible and feasible. But is it a necessary requirement that we need to create a new governmental body and create more government?
we can get you that information because the land bank has approved a housing study that should be done.
It's actually true.
In the next 60, 90 days or so, I would say, and we will ask them to look at that particular caveat to provide some data.
Yeah, I think we need that, thank you.
And I would add too, that we have some data from Michigan Department of Corrections when it comes to the Community Corrections Advisory Board side. So people who are charged with a crime and are convicted of a crime, do an assessment that I believe is called a compass. And there's a list of maybe 12 what they call criminogenic needs. These are the things that contribute to criminality in our community. The number one in Shiawassee County, not going to be any surprise, is substance use disorder. Number two is something called, I think, criminal personality, which is a little still ill-defined for me. And number three is housing stability. So that means that we can address some of the issues of crimes being committed in our community if we can help create more stable housing, and particularly for those people who are involved with treatment courts or in pretrial services or those kinds of things, which is what we're looking at through Community Corrections Advisory Board. So, there's a fair number of people there that would, with it not being number three, that's not true in every community. There are 12 factors, and our top housing makes our top three.
I also toured a place here in Owasso, and they take in people, and they gotta have all kinds of restrictions and everything like that, so, drugs and all that, they can't have it, so. People got a lot of problems, you can't have them anyway, so. I think it's gonna be a big.
Any other discussion? So we're just beginning on this. Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it.
Before you move on, if there is interest in doing a tour of that facility, we'll send out an email about that, and then we'll figure out how we can do that with, you want to do 3, or is there a way of hosting it?
Well, we
We'll
can
look
either,
into it.
I would ask that you tell Brian if you're a commissioner and you want to go on this, because if there's 3 or less, then we don't have to do anything as far as open meetings, but if there's 4 of you that want to go, or more, we might have to post it, and we can, I'm not gonna stop. There's also special education and conference exceptions to the OMA, so we will get everyone there who wants to be there, but if it's less than 4, I don't have to worry about it. If it's more than 4, I gotta do a little work, that's all.
We'll send out an email and we'll arrange something.
All right, at this time, we have opportunity for the public to address this board. Is there anyone who would like to speak today? Not seeing anyone coming forward, I think we can move on to our committee reports. Tom, would you like to start us off today?
Committee, Economic and Physical Development.
No, the committee reports is
Oh,
for
I'm
your
sorry.
report. Yeah.
Well, I would say, I did attend the MAC conference. I think I was there, all 3 days. And 2 things came up that, in particular, I noted. Number one, they gave a presentation on this human trafficking. It was given by a gentleman, police officer from Genesee County, and his name slips my mind at the moment, but it was the most animated discussion of all the presenters that I saw there. But he emphasized, among other things, that he mentioned former Sheriff McGold, now Representative McGold by name, for the fact that Shiawassee County, through the Sheriff's Office, had entered into a very active program on dealing with the human trafficking. I'll say he was very graphic in describing the human trafficking process and how dehumanizing and difficult difficult it is, and emphasizing the difficulty of, even when you rescue these mostly young people, mostly female, but some young males too, from this, what is in essence a sex trafficking activity, to rehabilitate them is very difficult. But he did mention that Shiawassee County had actively entered into the program with Genesee County, and then I asked the question at the end of the session, well, are you still in contact with Shiawassee County's program and still maintain that relationship? And he indicated that Shiawassee County has its own program following through on what had been established there. So I was impressed with the fact not only that we got involved, but that we continue to, the present sheriff maintain that activity. And the other issue that was raised, which I mentioned to some of you, is the fact that there's a state Supreme Court case pending that deals with funding of trial courts, primarily, I guess it's the district courts. And the issue of the case is whether charging defendants costs is constitutional or not.
Oh, the court cost case?
Yeah, and that, apparently that decision is imminent, and
Yeah.
if, depending on when the state Supreme Court moves, then we're gonna be faced with the issue of funding. That we have oversight of that court, and so we're gonna be involved, yeah.
Just because you raise court funding, and I know that might scare some people, so the court costs, when you get found guilty, they say fines and court costs, right? You all heard it. Well, the argument was that the court costs aspect of it, which go to reimburse courts for the putting you in jail costs, are not authorized by statute or constitution. So the state legislature has in the past several years authorized by statute and then reauthorized court costs from, I don't know how far back it goes. So I don't know how big the problem is going to be if we have to do back whatever, because they've kind of they've authorized a big chunk of the last, say, 5 years or 10 years. And then the other thing is that I would expect that the legislature would fix the court decision if it comes out adverse. We're not going to live in a world where court costs can't be assessed. That's my opinion.
Well, I'll say MAC, the Michigan Association of Counties, made it one of the two big opening presentations. They're concerned about it, and there was a committee set up, I think in 2019, that came up with recommendations, but the legislature has not, in the eyes of MAC anyway, the legislature has not followed through on recommendations made by the funding committee.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's just, I was impressed that they were dealing, I thought, rather forthrightly with that issue. It could come back here. That's all right.
Thank you. Commissioner Howard?
Yeah, so the planning commission, we're working on updating our ordinances, we're going through that. I expect that we'll see at least a portion of that come through sooner rather than later, and then maybe followed up by other sections. The planning commission has yet to approve a draft of any of those, looking at maybe doing that in our upcoming meeting in May. Parks and Rec, working on applying for grants to get funding from Michigan. The state of Michigan, as you know, there's lots of money out there, putting together something to apply for some money. On top of that, working on improving some of the other parks we already have, adding bathrooms. We rolled Chi-Town Park, mowing, benches, just park beautification in general. And then the last one was the MTA, the Michigan Townships Association. We have our annual picnic in June at Chi-Town, and that's where county officials and township officials can get together and share information and get a good pulse of what's going on in the county by every township.
And you'll feed us.
And we will be fed, yes.
Thank you.
Do you have a date?
The first
Tuesday
Tuesday.
of June, is it the
The
sixth maybe?
6th, yep.
All right, sure I have that on that, I think I do.
Excellent.
Thank you. Commissioner Webster.
So probably the biggest, item that I have to talk about tonight is Shiawassee Council on Aging. I think probably we've talked about this before, we were looking at doing some renovations to the Owasso facility. And, we're exploring another idea now, and that is the Owasso Middle School is, likely going to be purchased by a development group, and they are offering space in that building to the Council on Aging, which would be on the first
Nice.
floor. If you've been in Owasso Middle School before, it would be basically where the cafeteria area was. And one of the great things about that is that there is a kitchen that's probably 3 times the size of the Owasso Senior Center, which was one of the big reasons for renovation, is that we don't have enough space in the senior center for all of the meals that are prepared, both for Meals on Wheels and for the congregate meals that happen. And it would, the SCOA board is looking at the potential of offering an adult daycare, a senior adult daycare, which would be a huge asset for this community. We don't have something like that for, of course, family members who are taking care of a senior adult who they may need to leave during the day. So there would be space there, just abundant space and a really great way to serve our seniors. And so there have been a couple of meetings with Venture Inc., I believe it's called, who is the development company that will be buying the middle school, and the architect that was working with us on the potential renovations for the senior center, and their architect. So those discussions are all happening. It's still very much in strategic planning kind of phase. We don't have a price tag yet. There was a mention of possibly allowing them to buy for $1 and be part of a condo kind of thing, and we would pay for the renovations and be responsible for all the things inside the building, and they take care of the outside. But that nothing is set in stone. So in our meeting today, we talked about how this all sounds great, but we don't have a price tag on it. And so until we have that, it's a dream, but it could turn out to be an incredible resource for our community. And just, with the housing that is likely going to happen in that same building and some other things that have happened there, having the senior center there would just be a really nice advantage, and I think a much better location, and we believe that we could probably do it for around the same amount of money or less than we would do renovations on our current location, and in the end still have a much bigger and better facility. The GST Michigan Works did not meet last month. Nothing really new to report from Valley Area Agency. Things always seem to go really great there. Community Corrections Advisory Board, we submitted our grant, and with your approval tonight, that will continue to move forward. They never say what happens if we don't approve it. I guess the grant just gets pulled back, but we submitted that, and so all that went well. And then Health Department, I have not been there in the last couple of months due to some family and health situations, but I am meeting tomorrow with Larry and the sheriff. Larry is looking at a harm reduction program. So I'll be interested to hear about that. We're meeting tomorrow at the health department with the sheriff, so should have some updates about that.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson. Hold on. Yes, sir.
Is harm reduction code for what? Needle sharing? Hopefully not.
So I don't want to talk about it until I've heard what
Okay.
Larry's looking at.
All right.
Yeah. I know
Is
it's
that when that word
quite-
comes? That's a pretty loaded word.
Right. I have not heard a presentation yet, so, I mean, I know how that word is attached to different things.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
I'll see what he's proposing and then I'll report back. I will add, though, that I need to be excused from the June meetings, because I have been elected to serve my church district at our global assembly, so I won't be here in June for that week,
All right.
okay?
Very good. Not that you're gonna be gone in the presentation. Commissioner Johnson.
The road commission is looking to build a cold storage facility, on the south side of where the road commission is right now, for approximately $200,000. They were looking at a hoop style building because it was much less money. However, now the stick build has come down in price significantly, so now they're looking at a stick build cold storage facility.
What do they use a cold storage facility for?
From what I gathered, they're looking to store equipment in there. So it's not gonna be heated. When I say cold storage, it's
All
just
right.
a storage barn.
I hear that, I think a refrigerated area, and I was gonna say.
Yeah, no,
Keep
no,
the
they're
beer
gonna store
cold.
food and beer in there.
Okay.
No, they're gonna store equipment
All right,
in
that
there.
that makes a certain amount of
It would
sense.
be warm storage in the summer.
Yes.
That help?
Could be hot.
That helps a lot, thank you.
You're welcome.
You feel better now, Mr. Chairman?
I do.
They're also starting their various mowing projects this week. And they bought a new stump grinder and a patch trailer for their paving, asphalt. That's about it.
All right,
They're hot and heavy in the summer projects.
Commissioner?
I was reading in the paper, EPA says that they're having problems, they don't wanna put salt on the road in the winter and summer, so they wanna eliminate that for the salt. And I don't know if they got into that or not, but they're having big meetings on it.
We're not gonna salt roads anymore?
Not as much, they don't want so much for the dust and so much for the winter, because it's polluting, they claim. EPA's getting into everything, so you
Ruined
don't
my
have to.
car, that's for darn sure.
Yeah, I
So
know.
this came up at the final road commission meetings as we were transitioning from winter to summer. And you're right, there's a lot of discussion on it, and it deals with the chemical mixture that they use, because it's not just salt. So there's new restrictions going on.
Well, it said brine, so brine is salt to me, so.
They'll be addressing that this
Yeah.
summer and fall.
Yeah, EPA, they'll come down on everything.
Yeah, that's not going away.
Yeah.
There's gonna be a lot more discussion of this, for sure. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner Garber?
I have nothing today, thank you.
Okay.
Sure.
Commissioner Olshausen?
Well, I'm on the 911 board, and they finally got their sewer line hooked up. I was kind of surprised we spent over $1 million on the building and never hooked up to the sewer line, but I guess that's the way things go. I'm on the senior citizen board, and I don't think Marlene did a pretty good job on that. And so far, it's just talk, so it's got a lot of talking, and that's it so far, the way I seen it, so. And also I'm on the Health and Wellness Board. We got 4 new members on that, and they're still worried about they want to privatize that, the state does. And I'm on SEDP, and things are going good there. They're also getting more, over in Vernon Township in the city of Durand, they're leasing more ground in case they want to put some kind of a big facility in there. And they're paying for leases, and they're upfront about it, so that's going good. And they're also maybe in the fall, they're gonna get hoping another $500,000 grant to help tear down some old buildings. Help them out. So. If there's any other.
Was that the number and the purpose, were they gonna apply for blight grants or from the land bank, or is
Because
that?
he's talking about the land
Okay.
bank money that's coming in.
Okay, that's interesting, I didn't know
Yeah,
that they had projects
Yeah.
that specifically they were looking at.
But Justin's on that board, so he
Yeah.
brings it up, and
Right,
I hear all about it. So.
I'm hoping to talk to lots of mayors and township superintendents and so on, and get a nice, lot of good proposals. So, we have plenty of lead time this time, unlike the last time it was pretty rushed. But, that's all actually going pretty well. I think everything's online for that, since that came up. We're looking good on the simplicity, or it's.
Yes, Simplicity and Linden will be the first 2 that are part of the blight grant problem. There'll be a special board meeting for round 2 on Monday, where they will discuss an application to the state Round one, the land bank board got to select which properties up to a certain amount of money. And round two, they'll be put into a pool at the state. And the state will select them based on a set of criteria. Round three will come back here to the county, and the land bank board will select again. But I don't think that pot has been allocated yet, how much for round three.
But they're talking $500,000.
Probably.
That would be nice, because we only got 200 on the first one, so we can do a lot of blight elimination for that. All right, thank you all. Commissioner Howard, if I can bring it back to you.
Yes, I move to approve the L4029 form as presented to establish the 2023 summer tax millage rate and authorize the chairman and the clerk to execute the document.
Support.
I have a motion with support. Any discussion on that item?
Just want to note that heavily did not affect us because of the formula. Our taxable value went up about $113 million, which means that our total overall collection of additional revenue will go up about $619,000.
Very good. I think I need a roll call vote on that one.
Yes. Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Garber,
Yes.
Commissioner Howard,
Yes.
Commissioner Emery,
Yes.
Commissioner Webster,
Yes.
Commissioner Holzhausen,
Yes.
and Chairman Broder.
Yes. All right.
Okay. I move to approve the proposal from Home Care for elevator upgrades in an amount not to exceed $18,200.
Support.
I have a motion with support. Discussion on that one.
Just, this is to update the elevator emergency system. There has to be a traveling cable installed, which is where the expense comes, and it has to go through the roof. And quite literally through the roof to be put in. And that's why this one's a little more, and it's an older style elevator. It has less cabling options available to us. We'll be able to move on the other ones without that additional expense, because they're no longer going to be landline emergency services. They're going to a cellular style system.
Good. Further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Garber,
Yes.
Commissioner Howard,
Yes.
Commissioner Emery,
Yes.
Commissioner Webster,
Yes.
Commissioner Holzhausen,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Chairman Broder.
Yes. This next item was public hearing.
We need to open a public
Yes.
hearing for the CDBG grant, and Brent Jones is here to give you a brief update, take any public comment that might happen on the subject, and then close the public hearing.
So I will need a motion to open the public hearing for the CDBG grant closeout.
So moved.
Support.
Got a motion with support for discussion. All in favor of opening a public hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Brent Jones for the SCDP.
So, good afternoon or evening to the board. Sorry.
If you would, thank you.
So this was a project that, while its CDBG funding came through the Michigan Economic Development Corporation Site Readiness Program. This was sort of a trend we saw within MEDC over the last few years, where they've identified that it's not enough to simply have a piece of land to attract a business. You have to be able to answer some questions as far as how is development going to lay out on the property? How is the property going to be served? What's ingress, egress on it? So they made funding available to some local communities to do some of that work on targeted sites. This particular grant was looking at 40 acres in Vernon Township on M71, where Great Lakes Fusion and a number of other businesses are located, but that 40-acre parcel had room for additional space, so we applied for funding there. We were fortunate to receive, I believe the number is $42,600, 100% grant funding. There was no match involved. Due to the demand in the program, though, they did route some of the money through this community development block grant, which is how the actual dollars flowed. This work, we were able to look at site layout. How could we effectively and efficiently use the land that was still there, that was available to be used? We were able to look at site ingress and egress off of 71 to minimize any traffic impacts, as well as looking in the longer term, should utilities go out that direction, how would that service be done? So that work has been completed. It's been a good benefit to us as, we have a good number of fairly large industrial options that we can pitch for sites, but this fills a nice small acreage role for us as it carves out a few, handful of acre parcels, just kind of rounding out those offerings Shiawassee County has available to us. So that's my update unless there are any specific questions.
Two things to note is the money had to be awarded to the county. We served as the fiduciary, so as part of the reporting process, we have to do the public hearing to close out the grant. This was the old Marsh Monument site in Vernon, and so it's been occupied by Great Lakes Fusion, and now they're looking at how to best use the land that for redevelopment within that boundary of those properties.
Commissioners, any questions?
Is this in the neighborhood of that large project people you're talking about?
No, it's in the neighboring town of Vernon. It's on its way there. It's all on 71 if you kept on going down. But this is that area where it comes to a point right in Vernon. I think we need to see if there's any public.
Yep, I'm gonna say thank you and see if, since this is a public hearing, if there are any of the public would like to comment on that. Seeing no one coming forward, then I would need a motion to close this public hearing.
So moved.
Support?
Motion with support. All in favor of closing the hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and the hearing is complete.
I move to approve the minutes of the May 15th, 2023 Economic and Physical Development Committee meeting.
Support.
Motion with support, discussion on those minutes. All in favor of approving those minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, minutes are passed.
That concludes my report.
Commissioner Webster.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item A, I move to approve the submitted CCAB grant to the MDOC.
Second.
Mm-hmm.
A motion with support. Further discussion on that grant?
I would just note that if we receive the award, it'll be almost $300,000. That doesn't require a match to implement these programs. And it's been an ongoing program since the mid-80s.
Those are my favorites. Roll call vote on that, please.
Commissioner Howard,
Yes.
Commissioner Emery,
Yes.
Commissioner Webster,
Yes?
Commissioner Olshausen.
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Garber,
Yes.
and Chairman Broder.
Yes.
Item B, I move to approve to appoint Tori France as Workforce Development Representative to the CCAB.
Support.
Motion with support. Discussion on that appointment. All in favor of approving that appointment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That appointment is approved.
And item C, I move to approve the minutes of the May 15th, 2023 Public Safety and Courts Committee meeting.
Support.
Motion with support. Discussion on the minutes. All in favor of approving those minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Thank you, Commissioner. I don't think I have anything else today other than we stopped over the Veterans Facility. It's moving along. They have drywall up. They were doing the mudding. Still hoping for a June opening. That would be absolutely great. And everything so far is on schedule with the courthouse. Is that correct? All right. So we're looking pretty good there. Dr. Boggs, do you have anything?
So just a couple of quick things. The audit work on the county side has been completed. We have scheduled that on your Wednesday meeting in June. They will be here to present to you. I believe they're in the UP, so they're probably presenting to us virtually. They're going to present the audit findings. Then we will also have a contract to continue our services with them for another 3 years. As far as the courthouse goes, everything is on schedule. They are working through, we went through there not that long ago, and they have put in a lot of the new piping already and removed it. We will be looking at doing a couple of upgrades to some carpeting areas that are in need of replacement and repair, and that will come out of the contingency in addition to what we already had planned. The vets, as you mentioned, they are mudding. They plan to be moving in to that facility by the 3rd week in June. Now the asphalting, there will be a change order coming before the board next month for asphalt. The Veterans Board today approved wanting to do the entire approach into the facility, and that's a change order in addition to what they had bid. They do have the funding for it. Didn't happen in time for it to be on the agenda for this month for the cycle, but it will be for next month. So the grand opening will probably be in July. They will be in there in June. They will be going in there before all of the work on the exterior is finished. Next month, you will also have a couple of items having to deal with 911 and a tower. Julie and I have been working on the blight elimination grants as well as reviewing some of the foreclosures that we have. We have a plan moving forward for those. And I met today with Maynard Casterian. You heard Eric talk about bonding and using the good faith and credit of the county for different projects. Not all of those are for county-specific projects. Some of them have been for other agencies that are connected to us, where we appoint the board, but not necessarily have direct oversight. I've asked them to develop for us a good faith and credit bonding policy that I hope to bring before the board before the end of the summer, where it sets out some of our rules and regulations of what we would want to see and what we need. Because every time we allow a group to bond, it changes our debt ceiling and it affects us. That was an issue for us when we went to go bond for MERS, which was the first thing that we actually needed to bond for when we had been using our good faith and credit for some of these other agencies. So we want to set up a policy and procedure related to that for the board's consideration. And finally, all of the wage study materials are in. We reviewed them and they have been sent to the consultant, and we should have that hopefully by the end of the summer.
Very good. At this time, we have a second opportunity for the public to address this body.
Well, I guess, may I?
Please.
I missed Monday's meeting, so I apologize for that. I wasn't sure where you wanted to fit me in here.
I forgot to do
that's-
that, my apologies. Please go ahead.
No problem. Busy in the treasurer's office, settlements complete with the local units. We're getting ready to send out notices to those who have 2022 or prior taxes owing. The phone rings off the hook after people start getting those notices. We'll be busy. Then July 1st, we'll start the whole process over again with summer bills going out. But the big thing we're focusing on right now really is the foreclosures. And Tom, I'm afraid I missed you. I gave you each a list there of the 18 properties that we did foreclose on. I attached the tax-sale.info brochure. That's the auction site that handles the sales. You can go online, you can check it out, and just to see how it works. That's the way they've done it the last couple of years during COVID, and it seemed to work well, so they're continuing to do it that way instead of the old-fashioned way. I think they did them at the Comstock Inn and did them in person. So it will be an online auction, and you can view the whole state of Michigan. You can view other counties too on that site if you want. That sale will be finalized August 11th. I'm not sure the beginning date, but I know that you can look at properties or even start bidding. I think it's like a week or two before the final date that they have a chance to bid on properties, and you can check it out if you're so interested. Chairman Ruger and Dr. Boggs and myself did do a little drive yesterday to check out some of the properties. There are a couple homes that I think could be really cute. They could be, there's hope, and a lot of potential there. Most of the properties are vacant. A lot of little vacant properties. Some might be buildable. We did not view every property. There might be some out there more in the country that might be buildable, and then some are little tiny lots in town that I don't know. One, I actually talked to the neighbor, and he's very interested in one. He said he wants it. So some of those might go just because the neighbors want to increase their property. But, so that's about the news in a nutshell there. Unless you have any questions.
Our drive around, I think we saw basically 3 homes, one in Corunna, one in Durand, and one in Owasso that probably will still be homes, and one that's absolutely a tear down.
That's what it looks like to us, but
Oh,
I don't know.
How could it be anything? It was really, really bad.
Yeah, but sometimes people can can make something good out of it. We'll see, hopefully for the neighborhood, they can make something good out of it. Yeah, so that was interesting.
Yes, a vacant lot,
That'd be nice, it's better than what it is now.
much better.
And I think it's worth noting, we don't have some of the same issues that other counties have. Most of these empty lots, they're unbuildable now. They may have had a house on them at one point, but now, because of changes in standards, changes in the way things are designed, they can't really be built on again. So it's not like some of our neighboring areas with their foreclosures. These are a different type of foreclosure.
I'm just thankful. I had lunch today with 7 other treasurers. We met up in Frankenmuth, and Flint has over 700 foreclosures. And this is a small year for them. I'm like, oh,
They're doing
wow.
700 a year?
They, over 700 a year.
Just the city? Or
County.
Genesee County?
County.
Okay. But that's probably 80% city of Flint.
Right, yeah. Yeah, so.
Wow, how do they handle that?
Yeah.
But the others were kind of along the, Midland was 20.
Yeah.
They're smaller, but yeah, Genesee County, huge, I can't imagine what they deal with. So,
Thank you, Julie.
you're welcome.
Anyone,
Thank you.
anyone from the public? Caroline?
Well, since everyone is reporting on so much, I have been very quiet about Proposal 2 in the elections world because there's really nothing to report on. Every time we think we have a solidified answer, it gets changed. We do know that there are things in legislation right now that there are just, the Bureau is scrambling for how to do this statewide, especially with the 9-day early voting. How is that going to work? Some counties are telling their locals, it's on you. I don't know how they can do that, but some counties with larger means are able to open up what they're calling the super voting station. I have not had a meeting with my locals because we don't have any information. We don't have anything solidified. I'm one of these people that I'm not gonna get everyone excited about something we don't know anything about. City of Shiawassee will be doing the 9-day early voting for the August election that we will be having for Shiawassee schools. And that is on their choice. So they will be able to bill accordingly, and I think that's very proactive of her because she has let me know that they are going to do their own 9-day voting because they're open, and so they can do this because they have staff and the facilities to maybe have one place for all the precincts to go. But as far as countywide, Dr. Boggs and I have had some conversations. What would that look like? Where could I have it? How do I staff it? We will probably have to buy more election equipment because initially I thought, oh, I can use mine and then I can have it back for election day. And no, if I use mine, I can't close anything out until after the polls close on election day. So there's funding coming, but we don't know what that looks like. Dollar amounts have changed, whether that is going to go to who's it going to, how is it going to be stipulated to be used, what equipment are they going to be able to purchase more of. So that's why I've been quiet. We don't have any solid answers, and I'm realizing that we're in June very quickly, and we are a little on edge because there's a lot of prep work coming in for 2024. We do know that the presidential primary, as of this conversation, is for February 27th, which they have bumped up a couple weeks. So that adds more pressure on to us because we have to have everything ready for the clerks, ballots and everything to them 6 weeks prior to an actual election day.
And that places a real burden on some of our rural townships because having 9 days before the election of being open to vote is very difficult for them. The cities that have normal staffing hours, that will be easier to manage, but still it's going to require additional work and support. But we have a real issue with what's going to happen in some of our townships.
We did have a win on this spectrum of that. We can only do it 8 hours, and the state did not dictate what those 8 hours were. So that gave flexibility to those cities that are going to be doing their own, and that's nice. That was one thing. But, we do think that February will be a very slow run because people aren't necessarily understanding what it looks like. It is that they will be able to tabulate their ballot, but we can't touch those tabulators for 9 days. So on our end, we're like, yeah, how do we make sure everything is, functioning? I mean, there's dynamics to every night and making sure things are balanced and what you can touch and what you can't touch and all the rules. And they think that as things progress, these are 9-day early voting is strictly for the even year elections, just so everyone understands that as it progresses, they will see more momentum, just like we have with the mail-in votes, the AVs. The AV will still be an option, but it's going to be able to walk in and actually put your ballot in. So there's some dynamics they have to work out with that process as well, so.
Is the time gonna be 8 to 8 too, or you don't know
It will
that
be,
yet?
it will be dependent upon the jurisdiction
Oh.
or the county, if we do one. I honestly don't see how we can't.
We've had some early discussions about a super voting site.
So that would allow the townships not to have to do one.
That would, if the county chose to do one, and the city, it depends, we go into contracts. I know we will have to go into contracts with each individual jurisdiction.
Yeah,
But then if
but it can
we
be the
did-
same template, it's not like
Yes.
we're gonna do
If we
unique ones
did,
every time.
if we did one, I could do it for all of the townships if the cities were doing their own, depending, but I could do it for everybody.
I have a more general question related to your situation as you face this. Generally, the Constitution sets forth broad standards, and I know there's jurisprudence in the past that the legislature has to take action to implement. Now, I also recollect that Proposal 2 was pretty detailed and got into some specific things. So my question to you is, has the legislature passed any legislation that tells you or helps you in implementing Proposal 2?
That's what we're waiting for.
So
They're
there's been
having,
no
they're having
legislation.
many meetings during the week, and I know that things, hopefully by the end of June, they will have some things solidified for us. We're hoping.
I do recall some litigation where the constitutional provisions were not affected without this implementation
Right.
legislation. I'm not saying that's the case here, but it's at least an issue.
That's why we're all waiting, that's why MTA hasn't had anything on it. The local clerks conference didn't have anything on elections. Even at ours, the Bureau was saying, we need you to talk to us. Well, so, it's been a lot. We'll get through it.
So,
That
thank you, Carol. Anyone from the public wish to address this board? Seeing no one, we're adjourned.